burn. um, for some reason, at my gym, we have that song, and it's some type of edit or remix or whatever it's called, and it lasts for literally more than 10 minutes. Maybe I've said this.
It just takes forever.
Right, because it's not just Eminem, it's also some black gentlemen who add their own parts to it. It doesn't fit at all in the song. But I remember I was finishing up leg day, bloody thing, and just as I was doing my last set, I was supposed to go on the treadmill because I really do need to get on the treadmill. As I said, I'm 250 pounds. And I was on it for 10 plus minutes before the song ended. And it's the most interesting Sisyphean experience to listen to rap, which is torture if you are me.
It's torture. It's torture if you're anybody.
Well, I'm risking it with the thumbnail. I'm not going to say things that are going to incriminate further. So how's it going, Andrew?
It's going good, man. How are you?
I'm well. Busy, starting of autumn.
Starting a what?
Of autumn.
What the fuck is that?
I'm sorry. Fall.
What?
The season of autumn.
Oh, autumn. Okay. I'm sorry. The Saruman accent was just too thick for me to get it right away. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought you were messing with the word autumn because you Americans go, oh, leaves fall, let's call it fall. But it is what it is.
Well, I mean, we do also use the word autumn, just so you know.
Yes, I've heard. But you also do tend to revel in your pedestrian ways. So to get this started, as I said, DPH is going to be streaming in about 2 hours. So we'll try not to cut into his time. But I also like to make things informative, as I said, and ask you for as much detail as you can provide me with. So if you would, Andrew, give us the basic overview as much as you can boil it down, and we can talk about specifics afterwards.
Okay. Well, before I do that, let me give an introduction. My name is Andrew Wilson. I am the host of The Crucible. The Posh Redneck cannot be expected to give me a good introduction himself, as he's a Serbian and they have no manners whatsoever. Very low-class society, to be perfectly honest with you. I have no idea what the hell they're doing. So I'm going to do it myself, right? I appreciate being brought on to this program. You can find The Posh Redneck over on his channel, which is called The Posh Redneck. Great channel. He mostly deals in theological debates and in kind of theological breakdowns of things. So he had me on today because he wanted to discuss the topic of Christian nationalism, which I appreciate because talking to a theologian about it, especially, I feel like I'd be harder pressed to deal with the questions there than I am from the lunatic secularists. So anyway, I appreciate that very much, Posh. Now from there, now that the formalities are taken care of, it's very American of me to have those reasonable expectations. But now I feel like you may proceed with the interview, Posh.
Well, thank you. I easily slip into this whole idea like we're at a bar or something. Mm-hmm. So I keep forgetting, but you're right. Your YouTube channel and your secondary YouTube channel and your Twitter X or whatever it's called nowadays, the worst rebranding I've ever seen in my life, are all linked in the description. So you can find Andrew there and all the debate content, which we all like. So again, after the formalities, could you give us the basic, definition of what Christian nationalism is?
Well, I was really just kind of trying to run the clock out here so we wouldn't get to any serious questions. And I feel like you're going right for the jugular immediately, Posh. Like maybe, don't you think maybe a couple of dates first? You know what I mean? a couple of dates before you have this kind of expectation?
Interview you. I've seen people interview you always like, oh, I'm so sorry. I sort of like mushing that Irish cap in their hand, None of that.
That's fair. So the thought process behind Christian nationalism is not nearly as nefarious nor sinister as people want to imagine it. For some reason in the West, we have this kind of ideological foundation based on Enlightenment principles that really doesn't make very much sense and pushes for egalitarianism, which has been an abject failure when it has been put into practice. And we've become an extraordinarily tribalized nation to the point where, I mean, you can just see it in the atmosphere everywhere you go, whether it's a work atmosphere, online atmosphere, even the differences between how states deal with each other. All of these different things have become extremely problematic because there's no glue which holds society together anymore. So what Christian nationalism proposes is that we try to introduce that type of glue, that type of cohesive kind of underpinning that will allow society to function at all. As we see that it's beginning its massive breakdown, we can see this in the imminent collapse of the population itself due to birth rates. Many people don't really understand that you really need the population of 18 to 30-year-olds to subsidize both the previous generation and the 4 generations which exist past that. So this one little group basically subsidizes the entire world. And if we don't have children and we're not replacing that group, what you end up with is a catastrophe going both directions that now society is dealing with the elderly, and they're dealing with it with children. And we see the plague of single motherhood on the one end, and then on the other end, we see the plague of the elderly not being taken care of. This is all a value structure problem. And so what Christian nationalism proposes is that we begin to embrace the value structure of Christian ethics, or at least try to lean society more into Christian ethics. That's what the proposition is. I think it's a good idea, and it's going to take a long time to do. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a cross-generational thing. But ultimately, there needs to be some kind of synergistic relationship between the spirituality of humanity and the states in which they operate in. This historically has always been the case, and it's never not going to be the case. Yet somehow here we have decided that we're going to try to dig a wall or a moat between the two things, and they really can't be separated. And this is why I think we have so much of what Trump referred to as North American carnage.
Okay, excellent. So I have no objections so far. So this is my first question. Do you conceive of Christian nationalism more as a socio-political or as a socio-cultural movement?
Well, if it's going to be a political movement, the culture necessarily has to change first.
Yes.
Because politics is downwind of culture, as you know. And as Jim Bob rightly points out, and I've rightly pointed out for a long time, culture is downwind of theology. So if we're looking at this in a total scale, the first step starts with a cultural shift. The way that you introduce such a cultural shift is granularly over an elongated period of time by having thousands of conversations like the one that we're having right now. You change one mind at a time, and you continue to do this until you can try to move into a cross-generational plan. Is it going to be difficult to do? Yes, very difficult to do. However, the Marxists successfully did do this in the West. They infiltrated the opposite direction over a 100-year plan, and they were wildly successful at it because they did it in a granular way. They did not come in machine guns blazing with Soviet red tanks trying to take over New York. Instead, they sent over high-profile academics and people like this to subvert the culture from the inside, and they were very successful at doing that. I simply propose that we do the same thing in the opposite direction. And I also believe that as Christians, we have a duty to do so, that is part of our duty to resist the satanic forces which are arrayed against us. And I believe that the satanic forces which are arrayed against us have seized every single major institution in the West.
Yes, so what you're referring to, the communist infiltration, or however one wishes to dub it, we're talking about the insight from people like Antonio Gramsci, in the early 20th century, after realizing that the Soviet experiment is a failure, concluding that educated middle-class people in the West are never going to fall for the types of subversions that happened, which were much more hands-on, much more militaristic. So he devised more of a plan of, as Peter Hitchens likes to say, you no longer go and take over the post office and the barracks and, wave your flag. Now you infiltrate the academic sphere, especially because you start seeping the poison from on high as far as the sociocultural strata are concerned.
Right. So it's just a kind of an easy way, I think, for people to rationalize this, is to understand that the United States can essentially, the population here, it's much harder than people give it credit for. We can take just about any open wound, meaning any type of wound from another nation, which is physically imposed on us. The body of the United States can take it very well. We don't seem to have much of a problem with that. If there was a domestic invasion or something along those roads, we would be absolutely fine. In fact, I would even pose that if the entire world got together to invade the United States through our shorelines, we would likely succeed in that battle. The problem is, of course, what we're terrible at is dealing with the gangrene from the wound. It's dealing with the poison which is left over from one of these wounds. That is what takes the body down. Our enemies, they're foreign enemies. Their plan for 100 years, actually past 100 years, has always been to state emphatically that the United States cannot be taken down militarily, and it cannot be economically crushed nor sanctioned, because our Navy is so ridiculously powerful, and we've always spent such an emphasis on it, that it's our job to secure the entirety of the world's oceans for people to exist in now. You cannot militarily do us in. The only way that you can do us in is with poison, and that poison has been seeping in, and we are at the final stages of the high breaking fever and the staph infection, and the antibiotics are working on overtime to try to get this infection out. And it could really go either way.
Yes, it is a very turbulent time for the entire world. Europe
okay.
well.
The entire world is the United States. I know that you probably include Serbia, okay, in the United States, as part of like global geopolitics. But I can tell you this right now, okay? Everybody can point at the United States on a map. Nobody knows where the fuck Serbia is, Posh. Where is it? Like, where is it? Is it in Asia? Is it in Asia, Posh?
I challenge you to have a world map centered in Europe on Greenwich and see the percentage of Americans able to find it on a global map.
Is it in Africa? Is it in Africa, Posh? Where is this place?
In the Balkans. It's why we're so awesome. And as you say, I think Serbia is part of the global geopolitical sphere. I wish we weren't, but places like the United States and Germany disagree. So we sort of have to deal with it, being, I think, the only nation in Europe that has not sanctioned Russia. That's fun. But back to our topic. So, yes, as you said, the subversion is something that absolutely happened. Another, I wouldn't say great mind, but influential mind in this topic is someone like Rudolf Dutschke and others. But it was done subversively through academia. Now, I assume as Christians, we wouldn't really go for subversion or subversive tactics. We would go more head-on, more openly.
Actually, my proposition is the opposite. My proposition, you have what's called dissident right-wing politics, and you have right-wing politics, and you have alt-right politics. My proposition is called subversive politics, subversive right-wing politics. I do think that we need to take subversive tactics because the culture right now believes that our ideology is subversive. We really don't have much of a choice there. And by the way, calling it subversive, the kids just love the talk of subverting the institutions. You know what I mean? But if the institutions are wide open for this and they must be subverted, Why not subvert them with our messaging? Why not allow the Christian message to also be as subversive as possible to the constant barrage of cultural messaging that we see now?
Okay, I see what you mean. So you are more in line with the idea of, like the communists did, starting youth groups and sort of pretending not to be communists, but, dripping it in slowly but surely to the younger generations of students or something.
Well, I think it's a both and approach. I think that you need the head on tactics, just like the communists had, of outspoken communists who were very skilled orators, who were able to deliver the message well in both the debate format and also in the public speaking formats and forums and in their writings. And then I also think that you need to have the subversive element. The subversive element I call blue collar workers, blue collar Christian men. That is the subversive element. And I think that their primary duty, it's an actual duty that is now bestowed on them, that they need to teach their children Christian ethics and actually point them in the direction of academia and the arts so that they may subvert those in our favor.
Okay, so of course education is a huge part of this. You in America, I presume you're going to have to go with the homeschooling route. As whenever I see something about education coming from America, it is a horror show. But it is a result of decades of very diligent subversive processes by all manner of Marxists and left-wingers of perhaps not Marxist stripes, but adjacent at least. So the reason why I asked you whether it's more socio-political or socio-cultural is that you are in the United States and you have your constitutional order. And as you said, it is more based on these Enlightenment principles, endowed by the creator and everything. So the old joke, that the Soviet constitution quotes the Bible more than the American one. So I would argue that the American project is sort of founded on an expectation, as some of the founding fathers of America said, for a moral and religious people. But so the system wasn't designed to operate in these times. So do you believe it's salvageable?
Yeah.
That's why I asked. That's the socio-political aspect.
So here's the dirty secret, right? And maybe it's not such a dirty secret anymore because it seems to be right out in the open. The Constitution is exactly as meaningful as we decide to interpret its meaning to be. The Marxists have done a phenomenal job of making the bold claims that the things which are inside of the Constitution, everything from the Second Amendment to First Amendment, things like this, they have successfully reinterpreted history to kind of try to frame our founders and the founders of the nation as being Marxists themselves who just didn't know it, right? And they have been able to successfully in the political arena push that messaging and have the Constitution reinterpreted for their own whims and their own gains. I see absolutely no reason why we can't do the exact same thing, except the messaging that we would have would be far more popular. Marxist messaging was far less popular than the message of Christianity as the antidote and true counterculture to current degeneracy in the United States.
I see. So obviously you are doing your part, trying to do your part at least, in bringing the message out, both in just presenting it and in confronting different ideas and viewpoints. But still, I would have a reservation about approaching the American Constitution to the extent that it is very libertarian. Now, again, that is also going to go into the whole realm of what is for the federal government, what the states on their own can decide, because the amendments apply to the federal government, and people get into all types of discussions of what can the state do before the federal government can intervene.
That's true. Right? You are correct about all of this. However, I think that there is kind of a pivotal key point, which is that these are the tools that we do have. Just as the Constitution was a safeguard against communist Marxist infiltration and cultural subversion, the cultural subversion was still able to infiltrate regardless of the Constitution being intact, just due to the reinterpretation of it. There is absolutely no reason that we cannot do the same thing. And though it is true that we're in a unique position, in a unique situation, because we have these kinds of underpinning laws, clearly they can be utilized to our advantage as much as they can for the enemy's advantage if we're just smart about the process for which we go about it. Now, is that going to take a long time to do? Again, the answer emphatically is yes, but we have to start somewhere. So even if these are the tools and you think that that reforming is not something which is possible anytime soon, I wouldn't disagree with you. However, that God is all powerful and ultimately he's not to be mocked. And if you think that culture can't shift on a dime's wind because you have an entire nation who's mocking the Lord our God, I think that you're incorrect. There seems to be massive wake-up calls, which happens to different cultures who do that, doesn't there?
Yeah, it's always the question of whether you fall to the Assyrians or to the Babylonians. How angry is God? Okay, now in Orthodox, that's not how we phrase it. But I'm just being silly. So you wish to preserve the framework, and it is obviously.
Well, I don't want to preserve it, but I want to work within the confines of it because I don't have a choice.
Well, obviously, and revolutions tend to be worse for what they were intended to accomplish.
You almost never get what you want. You almost never get what you want. You almost always need a renaissance to get the culture.
You tend to get the opposite, I would argue. So the American Revolution could be seen in a different light because it's seen as chasing out foreigners to an extent, right? It's not that simple. It's not the modern idea of America and the modern idea of Britain, and people consider themselves Englishmen. But it was still a foreign entity wishing to chase out.
Briefly on the interview, I have to cut in very quickly because you're terrible at this. Okay. Make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that you send in a super chat, not on the Crucible side. Make sure you send it in on the Posh Redneck side. Just $2, and he can pay his rent for a month. Imagine all of the good.
I don't have the option yet, so
you have a dono chat. Didn't I give you a dono chat?
No.
Yeah, I did.
I don't remember. You asked for info, and I don't remember receiving a dono chat.
How did we not have you with a dono chat? All right. Well, here's what we'll do. All the proceeds of today on the Crucible via the dono chat link will go directly into Posh's pocket so that we can make sure that he can take care for 50 cents. He can take care of his entire extended family. Can you imagine with all the good that we can do this fine day for this gentleman? So I'm going to do a little bit of shameless plugging on his behalf because he won't do the shameless plugging on his own behalf, and he should. So I just wanted to cut in briefly in the interview to put that out there. With Posh, go ahead with your inquiry. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we missed each other on the dono chat thing, but we'll figure that out in due time. And I will be able to afford more beer and then do the famous Serbian magic trick of turning a bottle of beer into family violence. But
I thought that was an Irish trick, bro.
We won't claim it, there's no patent way to patent it. So back into the political phraseology. Right. So the American Constitution, you would preserve it for now. But is there an ultimate view of it just being interpreted? I know, as I wanted to say, the absolute ludicrousy of having when someone's about to appoint a new member of the Supreme Court, that you're looking for someone to interpret it in a certain way. There was a famous in the 2008 American presidential election when McCain said that he would pick judges that would stick to a conservative interpretation, in the sense of not political conservatism, but conservative as in the conservative interpretation as is traditionally has been since the writing of the thing. And then Obama said the Supreme Court should be the last friend of the needy and stuff like that. So it's obviously a problem. But do you believe that you could have this system without adding certain things? Like they keep inventing, departments of this and that all the time. Do you believe such actions would need to be taken, and would they have the ability to enforce cultural norms?
So a couple things to look at there. Initially, in the United States Constitution, the Supreme Court was actually extremely weak. It was not the all-powerful branch of government that we see today. It had far fewer judges, and they've already packed the court. Okay, they've already packed it. The way that the incepted Constitution operated was designed for maximum individual autonomy. That's true, but only under the expectation of extreme duty. So there was an expectation of extreme duty in order to have that type of personal autonomy. When that works, it works well. It works as well as any system I've ever seen on planet Earth. However, it's wide open for subversion, as we now have seen in essentially every single Western democracy which exists that has a formula like this. So, will this necessarily erode over time? It will, but so will a monarchy. So will a limited democracy. All of these things will limit over time. But some of these systems are not quite as open to subversion as some of those other systems are. So if you're asking, what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal would be to kind of give the express understanding to people that your rights really don't exist other than as a figment of your imagination. They're a completely constructed thing that we've made the existence of them up. And they really only extend as far as what you can enforce. You, the individual, or you as a collective can enforce. And absent that enforcement, we can see that these rights really don't exist, and they never really have existed. With the kind of baseline understanding that this is true, we have to have moral leadership. We don't have a choice. If we do not have moral leadership, and we have seen that rights are just a figment of our imagination, then we're literally railroading ourselves. So if we don't have some kind of ethical foundation inside of our system, we're always going to degrade to the point where you cannot come back, ever. And this will just happen as a cycle over and over and over. And one thing that the Constitution was terrible at was laying down a framework for morality, whereas many, many other places and many other codes of conduct and things like this for rulers were very, very keen on laying down what was moral and what was immoral. So that's one of the massive limitations. So I think we definitely have to move into the realm of trying to find some kind of ethical foundation from which people can operate from.
Okay. So, full disclosure, I'm a monarchist, but this isn't a monarchy versus Christian nationalism stream. That's not what I'm talking about. But
well,
I
isn't
will
monarchy
use it as
just Christian nationalism anyway?
Well, that's what we're trying to find out, whether you wish for so as I've understood you are much more interested in the socio-cultural aspect of things, because that will tend to seep then into the political structures themselves. You are not looking for a top-down approach, but more a bottom-up approach.
Yes.
Not exclusively, of course.
Let me explain the reasoning here. And see if you can dispute this. Assuming that you had a monarchy, assuming that you had a full-blown democracy, assuming you had a limited democracy, or assuming that you had some sort of other in-between government from that, the form of government itself doesn't seem to matter nearly so much as the ethical principles of the foundation of the people who live inside whatever the geographical area is. If the people of this geographical area are moral, then regardless of how bad a ruler you may have or how good of a ruler you may have for whatever limited time they're allowed to rule, the population itself seems to be healthy, happy, breeding, doing all the things that they're supposed to do. So it seems to me like this has always been a foundational ethical problem, far more so than it is a geopolitical problem or just a systems problem. I think people are so confined into trying to break things down into working systems that they forget that you have to start with a working ethical system to move to any other kind of process. You know what I mean? And this is what I think is missing. This is the cultural adhesive glue. And that's why I think that the founders, who are not stupid by any means, thought that this experiment could work, was because they thought that the kind of cultural underpinned glue was extremely strong in the adherence to these ethical codes. And it turns out that maybe once upon a time they were, but over time, the erosion of these kinds of ethical foundations are just so over the top it's very difficult to keep them intact.
Yes, and you have the problem of just a couple of decades ago, no one would think
one
that...
second too. I'm sorry, before I just cut you off. I see this guy spurging in my chat, right? Skeptical atheist. Don't derail my chat or I'll throw you out of the chat. You're welcome to talk about the topic at hand. You're welcome to do that. Don't derail my fucking chat. I have zero tolerance and I don't care. I'll ban you in a second. I don't give a shit. Don't derail my chat. Go ahead, Posh.
Yes. The subverters must be dealt with. Very Gramscian of him. As I was saying, your point being that the structure itself is less important than what is the people that are under the system, because you are going to fall into the problem of just having force to use on the people. And we know that the moment that is what the government has to do to maintain moral values or even maintain its operability, that is when the system collapses. You sort of can only deal with a couple percent of people who are going to be disobedient to the system. Otherwise, things collapse. But when, as I was trying to make the point, no one would a couple of decades ago thought that one of the biggest issues we would be having right now is whether children should be put under the scalpel to have them mutilated. But it is happening currently as we speak. It is no longer fear mongering from the crazy Southern Baptists or whatever. Now it's a reality we have to interface with. I think likewise, when the Constitution was being written, you didn't really have atheism as a political movement. You had certainly intellectuals who were more of the atheistic kind, although the closest you tended to go was deism, because you need a lot of modern scientific theories to be able to maintain the idea that there is no God, there is no creator of any kind, be he personal or impersonal. But obviously that has changed. And as much as atheism is nonsense, it is a very popular cultural trend which sells sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And we are left with the dreary task of, selling things like...
Yeah, but what makes those things so appealing? What makes those things so appealing is not that they're extra special or extra awesome, though I would argue that heavy metal, right, which most of it has heavy satanic imagery, is like my favorite music on planet Earth, right? I adore it, right? It's
I used to have hair back down to the half my back, so I know how it is.
But the thing is like what makes these things generally so appealing is that the youth always runs off of a cycle of rebellion. It always does. And this is the way that it tests its boundaries and what it can do and what it can't do, right? So the children always push their boundaries in order to kind of feel their way out and try to learn how to engage with their environment properly. And this is why countercultural movements are always so heavily inundated with people who are in their 20s and in their late teens. And this will always be the case because they are trying to kind of push outside of the trend of their boundaries. So the thing is that while that is appealing the other direction, it's just as appealing to move into the cultural subversive messaging of Christianity for young people as well, if they think that it's countercultural and is pushing boundaries. So I feel like these things can be utilized on our behalf as much as they can on the enemy's behalf.
Yes, another thing I see why this attempt of yours has a chance is that when we had the sexual revolution of the late 60s, and as it metastasized into all manner of foul things, there was actually an adult system around it. There was a functional system around it. Nowadays, we don't really see function. We see amateurism, we see nepotism, we see all types of responsibilities being given to people who can't really handle them. So the system doesn't really work. And if you're trying to go into the 60s and the 70s, where the adults are actually adults, and go to a young person back in those days and tell them, hey, don't you think you can just relax a bit, have a spiff or whatever it's called, I don't know jargon, but
have a piff. What?
Spiff. I think I've heard spiff. I don't know.
Have a spiff.
Unless they mention it in South Park, I don't know. Just go and have fun. But there's still a functioning system around that. So you have a lot of latitude to fail and to be a failure. Mm-hmm. And you can still, get back into it. Whereas nowadays, I don't see that happening. Nowadays, you see disorder. So selling more disorder is still going to appeal to your base instincts.
Well, let me give you a little bit of pushback here, just a bit, if you don't mind. So kind of my critique of what you're saying here is that I also think that one of the big problems that we have is what I call institutional adherence blindness. So what ends up happening is people value an institution far more than they value the people who are running it. They kind of, in many ways, deify various institutions which exist rather than kind of operating within the confines of the people who exist to run those institutions. And so what I think happens is a sort of cultural blindness to the adherence of a process becomes the norm. We can see this with the scientific process, for instance. People will literally take this scientific process and not know anything about it. They don't even know what the process itself is, and yet give great adherence to this process and give a maximum charitable view to anything which the process says is a truth, even if it's not a truth, even if they really have no evidence for it whatsoever. And it's institutional blindness. And one of the things that kind of deifying academia has done is it's created people having kind of this massive adherence to these processes that in many times are incoherent. Science can't give you any ought statements whatsoever, and it does not claim that it can. And yet we cling to it, this thing which is only there to describe and give us reasons to and how to describe reality. And we take it and we try to make ought claims out of it, which is nuts to me, right? It's completely crazy to me, but that's what happens when people have institutional blindness. They can't seem to move out of the fact that, hey, this big conglomeration of X has decreed that this is true. And I have all the experts on my side, right? And this kind of thing. And yet most of these people, these academics, when I engage with them, when I talk with them, or you talk with them and engage with them, to be perfectly blunt, they're fucking stupid. They're fucking They have no idea what the hell they're talking about. And they just talk, but they're not saying anything. Whereas the jobs that people like us have, we have to move within a system and fix it repeatedly. That's our job, is to rapidly respond in any type of private sector job in order to fix whatever problems come up as immediately as possible without a single attaboy or any recognition at all other than a paycheck. And so it's created this divide in the way that I think kind of the upper and middle class and lower classes look at each other. The upper class really thinks that they're kind of above the fray. They're kind of, because they have this institutional process that only they know and have the keys to. Everybody else is kind of just plebs, and they're kind of stupid, and they don't really know what's going on, and they kind of need to be guided. However, you can kind of see this shift happen where you come to find out the more that these people become readily available and you can talk to them, the less they know. I mean, you look at them and go, you just don't know anything. How in the world are you in charge of anything? I wouldn't put you in charge of walking a dog or tying your shoes, right? And yet you're supposed to be in charge of this giant institution, which is supposed to tell us how to run our lives. And that sort of institutional blindness, I think, can only exist absent moral grounding. I don't think it could exist without, with moral ground. I don't even think it could.
Yes. So the problem is I plan on doing a lot on sloganeering, because I fear that sloganeering is the most difficult disease to deal with. Because as I try to separate the difference between a slogan and a proverb, is that proverb is supposed to have as much wisdom packed into it as possible, whereas a slogan is supposed to be as vague as possible, but still have a semblance of coherence. But the advantage is that you can read into it. It's very malleable. And that is why when you say institutional blindness, it's people reading into the institutions. That's why they might not like the occupants even, but they still see the institution. Why? Because it's vague enough. They can put their own biases into it and then reject it or accept it at will, ad hoc. I think that is sort of a symptom of platitudinous sloganeering that we have been dealing with, especially again since the 60s. But
yes, you're absolutely right. But again, kind of there's a double-edged sword there, which is that the right wing and the kind of the Christian element, which exists as the kind of blue collar backbone of and infrastructure builders of everything, have been able to subvert in a completely different way than the sloganeers ever expected, which is through meme warfare or shit posting. There is nothing more powerful than a good meme. Jim Bob has made an entire career out of basically creating advanced memeing, right? It's an advanced meme. And what these memes do is they're designed also to convey maximum amounts of wisdom, just only to something which is culturally relevant right this second, so that you can draw a lot out of that. And I do think that that is extremely useful. And I think that the fact that the right owns the memes gives us yet another insight into how we can really fight back in culture, because left-wing memes are dumb and they're not funny. And even the left knows that they're not funny and they make no sense. You know what I mean? And it's not because I don't understand them. It's because I do understand them that I know that they're not funny. Right. So the thing is like, as I look at this and I hear you say, and you're absolutely right to point this out, that left-wing sloganeering has been extraordinarily effective. I'll give you some examples right off the top of my head. My body, my choice, right? Super effective. Most loaded shit that I've ever heard in my life, but super effective, okay? Or how about they hate us for our freedom? That's another really good one, right? They hate us because we're free and they're not free. Terrible messaging when you really start to break it down. It's like, you really think that they hate you because you have independent freedoms and they don't, and so they want to hurt you for that? That's stupid, right? But highly effective, right? Another one which has really dug into the psyche of most Americans is this is the land of the free, right? Land of the free, home of the brave. It's neither the land of the free nor the home of the brave. It's neither of these things, but the sloganeering again dives right in. And I mean, the kind of the examples go on and on and on. So yes, I agree with you that the slogans definitely can have massive impact, but I just think that kind of our warfare mechanism, political warfare mechanism back against that direction is to utilize memes and shit posting, which seem to be even more effective than the slogans themselves.
Yes, there's an imagistic element to them. And again, Jim Bob is masterful at this, being able to condense so much into 2 or 3, panels. And there are other, right-wing creators who are also good at this. The problem, as you said, with the slogans, however, is that they require a level of fealty. So if you say, oh, it's the land of the free and the home of the brave, that's not true. Now you are morally wrong.
Right.
Irrespective of whether that is the case, you're supposed to make this statement. It becomes almost like a creed of sorts.
Freedom isn't free, Posh.
Yes, yes. It's not just left-wingers who do this, right? Libertarians have their own, conservatives have their own, but it simply breeds intellectual lethargy, and I fear that this is what it's come down to, because I follow a couple of conservative normie accounts. And I can't express the dread that overtakes me. The one I like bringing up is someone posted, yes, we support LGBT, liberty, guns, beer, and tits. And I'm like, thank you for defending the glorious Christian tradition.
Yeah, that's all we wanted. All we wanted was our booze and big boobs. Why didn't they know this, right?
Like a woman who's in the nude, safe for like being wrapped in an American flag.
Mm-hmm.
But
now a lot of, it's
interesting.
Americana. Interestingly enough, there is kind of this cultural underpinning for this because America has been involved in so many of the massive wars of the world, especially in the 20th century. There was a huge amount of young troops, young men between the ages of about 16 to 24 who most heavily fought in those conflicts on our behalf. And in order to entertain them, of course, having half-naked women go and dance for them, obviously, was a huge boost for morale. And so same thing with superheroes. All the superheroes, Wonder Woman, Superman, all of the cape stuff that you see, all of that came out of these different war eras as well as propaganda. But what's happened is with the pinup girls and things like that, that was all wartime propaganda to keep morale high. And so in some ways, it is definitely part of Americana. It is part of our kind of ingratiated history and this kind of thing. However, in retrospect, we can kind of look at it and say, well, it was good to keep the morale high at the time. You know what I mean? But it actually became yet another type of cultural subversion that we weren't looking for, which is, afterwards the boomer generation who had kind of access to this, especially in the Vietnam era, where the USO shows were, I mean, they might as well have just been sending them strippers, right, for the USO shows in Vietnam. Of course, they come back after being young men in a very overly, sexualized nation where they were able to get prostitutes and go to these USO shows and things like this. And they just really didn't see much of a problem with it. So you can kind of see why at the institutional level not institutional, baseline level for a lot of boomers of that generation, why they just wouldn't see any big problem with this, right?
Yes, but also you mentioned Vietnam, far less mentioned because this is, I think, on the level of the Soviet level of propaganda about the Second World War, right? The Holy War, they literally call it the Holy War, Světá vojna. But the brothels of Paris were rather frequented, and the element you might not have mentioned is that these people were sort of expecting to die.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've shifted to Second World War. I mean the First World War. But these people were expecting
in both
to
of them.
die.
In both of them.
Both, but I mentioned Paris specifically, so I corrected myself. When you sort of expect to be just gunned down, and on the Somme, things were rather dire. You just got walked slowly towards the Germans, which can't go wrong. But they were just massacred. So they thought, well, this is what you do. And then combine the horrors of war with your only, aside from religious beliefs, which you have to sort of break and sacrifice for this sort of relief, of the brothel and the pinup girls, the less dire forms of it. You are left with sort of a broken mind. That can't go well.
The thing that's interesting with this is that there was actually better ways that they could have boosted morale, but those ways were considered to be immoral, and I would consider them far more moral. For instance, there's about 3 to 4 ways, roughly, right? There's probably more, but like main ways that I can give you that you can keep a young man's army's morale very, very high. The first is you introduce things like chocolate and ice cream and good foodstuffs to your soldiers. That's definitely a massive morale boost, right? Food for young men, especially, and for older men, right, is definitely a pinnacle of keeping our morale high, regardless of the situation. So if my feathers are really ruffled, but I have a good meal, they become far less ruffled, right? And you would agree that that's likely true for most men. Another good way that they could do this to keep the morale high is by letting soldiers loot, right? The good old-fashioned loot. Now, looting, after you have decimated the enemy, and if you were to able in World War II, for instance, to take all of their gear and equipment and MP40s and things like that and send them on back home and then sell them and take their uniforms and take their gold and take their riches, that would have kept morale very high without the use of any of these kind of sexual gratification things. But The United States government deemed looting to be almost irredeemable. And yet I think that it's because the United States government itself wanted to be the looters, right? They wanted to be the looters. So if you go to a kind of other foreign wars, which have happened around the same time frame, looting was heavily encouraged, whereas sexuality is highly discouraged, because then you have camp followers, various prostitution organizations, which can introduce venereal diseases to your soldiers, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's actually far better thing to just introduce good food and allow basically what you kill, you keep. I think that these are both introductions for things which can allow for mass bravery. It gives you an incentive, and then on top of that, keeps your morale high. So I think that basically we just went around about it the wrong way. You know what I mean? So I can understand your thought process of, hey, things are dire. Of course, a young man at 19 years old who might die tomorrow is going to want to lose his virginity. You know what I mean? But I think that it would be equally as appealing to a young man at 19 to say, hey, listen, if we can successfully take out this foxhole, you get yourself a brand new flamethrower, right? I think that that's equally something that you can introduce to them for the kind of purposes of boosting morale. Just kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yes. So to round off this section, again, I like talking. I like the takes of Peter Hitchens. I have a comrade in curmudgeonly with him. So he mentions this poem called Bonum et decorum est pro patria mori, which is an old Latin saying, which says it is good and laudable to die for one's fatherland. And it basically details that how you wouldn't have this idea if you actually saw the people, who choked on mustard gas and being eaten by rats and, throwing up their innards. So war stopped being this noble, so to speak, pursuit where it's, two armies clashing together, the better one wins, and it became, trench warfare. It became just meat grinders and poison, at least in the first one, especially with mustard gas. So I feel that Peter is correct in stating that the First World War, the war to end all wars, which worked out great, sort of decimated Europe, crushed in Britain, especially the idea of Christianity, because the churches were so rah, sort of like the way you have evangelicals in the United States, constantly warmongering. But the difference being that this was England and this was the Church of England. So it has this level of authority and identification with the government. And when people who were young and idealistic and thought, well, we need to stop those bloody Huns. They keep just going around raping nuns and stuff. We need to stop them. And they go there, and it's nothing what was told to them. It was just meat grinders and like other people who weren't as atrocious as they were presented, created a level of cynicism that haunts Europe to this day. But I don't know what I can say about your suggestion for warfare. I would need to think about it. Obviously, it's easy to say, well, it's just wrong. But again, we don't do sloganeering here.
Well, the thing is, it's hard for me to envision. You can tell me that the person over there wearing that uniform is the enemy and my job is to kill him. But stealing his shit, that's just a line too far. Okay? That's just, you know what I mean?
Like, that's splatter his brains. I mean,
it's just the stupidest thing that I've ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? But taking his stuff, you've really crossed the Rubicon here now. It's just silly. It's silly to me. So I think kind of one of the things that you want to back off on is kind of this supposition that these things are even necessary for morale boost to begin with. I'm not so sure that they are. I do think that it's kind of an interesting nuance to kind of a broader conversation of Christian ethics and warfare, which is something that I've thought about. How does a Christian ethicist go about making a prescription for how to conduct moral warfare? That's a really tough question. You know what I mean? So, but I do think that it's an interesting one to dive into. So I am glad that you brought that up.
Emperor Constantine introduced a law that soldiers would be paid for not killing the enemy, just capturing them, which again you could argue is detrimental to the tactical aspects of war. Sometimes you just need to eliminate people, but it also gives you the insight of, like Sun Tzu says, always leave the enemy a way out, because if they know they can't escape, they'll just fight.
But something to keep in mind was that Sun Tzu lost.
Also, he was Chinese, so
but he lost to other Chinese. So
that must have been rough.
Yeah, he was part of the dynasty that fell, not the dynasty that won. So
yeah, I hate the idea that people just listen to this, and there's great wisdom in his book, but it's one of those things. You say a foreign name, so people know that you are much more educated than you.
I mean, is there though? So, like, I have a really nice copy that I bought years ago of Miyamoto Musashi's The Five Rings, and it just all sounds like bullshit to me. It doesn't sound like a strategic genius to me whatsoever. And neither did Sun Tzu. He didn't sound like a strategic genius to me. He sounded like he was kind of trying to make himself sound more profound than he was. You know what I mean? Make his wisdom sound actually a little bit more profound than it was. It's like there's some intuitive things that come along with this, like Miyamoto Musashi, who's like, well, cut first. It's like, well, what do you want to cut second? Like, who would think that way? You know what I mean? I think that some of this is kind of an overemphasis or a buildup of these people who probably didn't deserve it. And they don't seem like they're particularly intelligent to me. If I put them up against, modern warfare general tactics or even ancient ones in Rome and Greece, I'm like, well, this is kind of basic stuff here, guys. You know what I mean?
Yep. But I think people like the pomp of quoting foreigners, especially the foreigner they are, the more.
Evan says the art of the fortune cookie. Just crack it open. He always leave your enemy a way to escape.
Well, the Romans and the Greeks used to, had their haruspices look at, innards of animals and the way birds fly. So I don't know if that's better or worse than fortune cookies. Okay, so back to our topic. Seeing as how things are going with society in general, as you said, the worst thing and one that concerns me most is the demographics. Not even the whether it's racial or ethnic or anything. It's birth rates. People just fail to grasp the things, and I think it's the self-entitlement born of this individualism. That I don't have to do anything.
Materialism.
Yes, but also the idea of individualism, because for the sake of being anti-communist, people destroyed the idea of collective, building collectives, because that sounds like some sort of Soviet bullshit to me.
Then all they do is try to create voting blocks, which is a collective, right?
Exactly, because you can't escape it. To quote Peter Hitchens again, he says, I don't feel the need to defend capitalism because it's just how things operate. I've got things, you've got things. We can trade with them. There's no need to create, grand theories about it. Likewise, I think this is what applies. You cannot have just individualism, and everyone knows that.
And we wouldn't want it. We wouldn't want to just have that either.
Yes.
Camaraderie is one of the major keys to masculinity and being a healthy man. Camaraderie for men is as necessary to our psyche and well-being as having a good food and having good women, right? Having good camaraderie is right up there with that. And it's a sign of healthy masculinity, being able to even have camaraderie with people that you don't like. So it reminds me of the old movies. Have you ever seen Grumpy Old Men? Did you ever see those movies?
No, I did see old movies, but I just don't watch films.
Yeah, so these are like old 90s comedies, but they were pretty funny, surprisingly. And kind of the premise was these two guys are best friends, but you would never know it because all they do is fight with each other 24 hours a day. They play tricks on each other. They put rotten fish in each other's car. They ice each other's steps. They're just dicks to each other, right? But the thing is that was a kind of their form of camaraderie. That was the way that they got through the day. That was the way that they got through kind of these horrible things that continuously happen in their lives and this type of thing. And I think a sign of healthy masculinity is exactly that. I mean, I don't know. When I was growing up, I used to wrestle all the time. I would do the body shots with the friends, right? Where you would, you'd get into that type of thing. And it was all fun. It was all good. And even later in life, I'm kind of moving into the center of my life now. Camaraderie is just as important as it always was, just that now we value different things. It's not so much physical competition or things like that. Now we've moved into like he who dies with the most toys wins. You know what I mean? Different stuff like that. But it's all designed to kind of push the other guy to doing the best that he possibly can. And there's been many times, for instance, where, I've been at a gun show or something like that. And, maybe a friend's like, man, really want to get that, but I only got $1,000. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, I'll spot you the other 500 and you give it to me later. They're like, okay. You know what I mean? And then later they hand it back or this type of thing. But it's all a form of encouragement. You know what I mean? Towards let's get all the stuff that you and I want to get, because if we cooperate together, we're going to be able to do this easier. You know what I mean? And that's part of the camaraderie that's necessary. So.
And it's also the case that you do things because it's good and proper to do them, right? Which is sort of lost on us today in modern culture, because in modern culture, you try to calculate everything, which is a miserable thing to try to do, because you never are able to grasp all the intricate, different vectors that go in different directions. So very rarely do we just say it's good and proper to do this. That is why we do this. But yes, likewise, back in primary school, my best friend, before he had to move away, we would fight literally every day. Very rarely did we skip. But after school, because he lived really, real close to the school, we'd go to his place and play video games. But it's such a normal thing. But also, we are seeing a very feminized education system, which produces rubbish. It is a universal thing. Back in when I was younger, we were sort of shocked to discover how much less was expected of children, for example, in Norway as compared to Serbia with mathematics. I remember something like they learned the equivalent of our 7th grade. They would learn fractions, and we learned them in the 4th grade. So, but things have been declining here as well.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, wait a second. To be fair to the Norwegians, when you have so little food that you have to make a cracker last for 17 people, then learning how to fraction it correctly is necessary, right?
Yes, it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah. So, but, I mean, just to be fair, like that, I think you're kind of leaving that part out a little bit there, Posh. That's
there's a treasure trove of topics to cover when it comes to what's happened to the education system, and I mean, even irrespective of the LGBT nonsense, just the matter at hand. When you read, it is very dispiriting to read what was expected of high schoolers like 70 years ago compared to today. And I think it's also part of mass education. I think education has also been, in a lot of places, expanded as far as how long it lasts for the sake of keeping unemployment numbers down.
Well, you have hit a very key nail on the head that very few people understand or know about. College is not supposed to be for everybody. If college was really about rewarding the best and the brightest in society, then not everybody would be able to achieve a degree. And yet right now, the standard is such that they can. This is not because we now have a huge plague of intelligent people. In fact, the opposite is true. College, if it was really about rewarding the best and the brightest, the barrier for entry would be very high, and very few people would ever be able to comply, nor pass nor finish it. What's happened instead is that we have lowered the standards so low as to make it available for everybody, that now the degree itself has become far more worthless because it's now become a requirement for what used to be a high school requirement. And yes, this is part of a process for elongated indoctrination, as in college, that's the best place to do this. And let me tell you why. Through the high school informative years, you will find that people, or children especially, right, because that's who's in high school, so like 14 to 18 years old, they are still young and very impressionable, but they have their parents around, right, in order to kind of guide them through these different things that's going on in their life and the different things that they learn in school, etc. Right? They're able to do this. But in college, you are now absent parents, right? Now you're on your own. Your guidance is your own. And what usually is introduced rather quickly and a blind eye is turned to is drugs, alcohol, promiscuous sex, things like this. In fact, that's become something of a rite of passage. So the drugs and alcohol lower the inhibition and lower kind of your ability to push back against indoctrination. In fact, the better you do with the indoctrination, the more likely it is that other people are going to reward you for moving towards that kind of indoctrination system. So, yes, this is definitely a massive problem. Very few people even know that it's happening.
Yes, and there's a history behind it. I mentioned, again, Peter Hitchens. He wrote a book on how British education began to decline and is just in dire straits right now. But he talks about this civil servant called Graham Savage, who moved to the United States. Went to the United States to study the American system of education, because the British system had what are called grammar schools. And grammar schools were these elite state-funded schools that you can get into on merit, right? And the government fills all your contracts, you pay for nothing. Which meant that the poorest of the poor, if they showed academic aptitude, you would be able to get an incredible education and move on up. But that is
there was always a pathway for those people. Though to be fair, it is true that if you were wealthy and you were part of a more elite class, the likelihood for you to get into these types of schools was much higher. But there was still a pathway. There was still a pathway for the lower class to get into it if they were exceptional. And the thing is, though, is like, listen, to be perfectly honest with you, it actually kind of makes sense to have a top-down standard this way. If your parents are both Ivy League educated and extremely bright, and the barrier for entry into that school was particularly high, it does stand to reason that recruiting out of their offspring, you're going to have a higher likelihood of finding those exceptional people. After all, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, whereas I think you do have to comb a little bit deeper for the lower classes. Kind of this great veil that's been put over everybody's eyes is that there's just as many intelligent people who are born to lower class people as there are to upper class people. And I don't actually think that that's true. I think that you have both an environmental factor then operating against you, and you also have the genetic factor operating against you. So I think that it's much more difficult to do. You know what I mean?
Yes, I wanted to emphasize there was a study that showed that reading to your children gave them a cognitive advantage that was greater than giving them elite education later on as compared to regular education. And the proposal of a sociologist was to stop reading to your children because you're giving them an unfair advantage. Now, you mentioned the environmental factor.
Well, not only does that not surprise me, but, kind of to reinforce that point, try to just recognize, even in your own life, that if you know people who are mechanics, oftentimes their fathers were mechanics. If you know people who are in construction, oftentimes their father worked in construction. The reason for this is because parents usually pass down the things that they know. and the things that they hobby and this type of thing. So if you have parents who are highly educated and they work as academic elites, what do you think they're passing down? They're not passing down their knowledge in the, engine block of a Ford Mustang. They're passing down the knowledge of arithmetic and writing and structures and all of these different things. So yes, of course, it's going to be advantageous. And I think it's kind of silly to pretend otherwise, to be honest with you.
Yes, and also the environmental factor is a factor.
It is a factor.
The working class parents don't have as much time or even access to resources as the upper class or the middle class parents. But what has resulted from this fix, which Graham Savage reported back to the British government, that sort of Americanizing the British education system would result in poorer quality education, but it would lower the class disparity. And he was only half right, because you did get a worse education, but it actually made class disparities worse, because you got this comprehensive nonsense going on, and now it's your area code that is determining, which school you go to.
But so, Posh, aren't we really looking at the same thing here? We're really looking at the same kind of, these are kind of externalized critiques of a foundational issue, and the foundational issue is this kind of rampant, rabid belief that egalitarianism is true.
Yes, that it also has a lot of presuppositions built into it, like the idea of tabula rasa. You're a blank slate, and it's only environmental factor. It's a social deterministic worldview. And if we just, which is the worst phrase ever, if we just did X or Y or Z, you would get equality or something.
Well, all you need to do is
exactly, yeah. And I fear that we've destroyed education. I am not happy thinking about the future, because I think it's going to take a lot of pain before things get better.
Well, there is a phenomenon, though, that should give you some hope, which is the amount of people who have decided to take it upon themselves to self-educate and improve. And that has become, again, a model introduced into the late 20th century that revolves around masculinity. This sort of self-improvement model, which I do descriptively agree with the red pillars on, that if you are going to be one of these low-class plebs and perhaps physically unattractive and all of these other things, then shouldn't you at least improve yourself to the point where you're the very best of whatever that version of a person could possibly be? And I think that moves along the same logical lines as what we believe with theosis, though it's not the same thing at all. The logical kind of understanding of why people would arrive at that conclusion makes a lot of sense to me.
I understand. The problem is that people people like the potentiality of outcomes coming to pass and materializing, rather than whether anything, even if it gets worse, they would prefer the potential, which is my biggest complaint about about democracy. I think I told you I call the vote the Messiah complex token. Right, it never does anything, but you like the idea of it. Your vote is the one that's going to get the guy who's going to save everyone over the finish line. It's pointless, but people like to think it is. And likewise with education, I was always an overachiever, but it doesn't matter if you are sort of put always held back so people don't feel worse about themselves. But on a practical level, it's if you're going to get a doctor, which is the easiest example to give, because he's got the sharp thingies in his hand and is supposed to go into you. So would you like that doctor to be the best of the best, which also goes for the people who are snobbish and believe that they're better than the poors? Right? Would you rather have a competent doctor from a poor background or would you rather, just have someone who's got the social cachet of some sort to get him to that position?
It's interesting you bring the doctor up specifically as an example. So my dad used to always say, when it comes to the word some, right? Well, you'd always rather have some food than no food. You'd always rather have some parachute rather than no parachute, right? You'd always rather have some rather than none, with the exception of a doctor, right? You don't want to have not some doctor is better than a good doctor. If you look at the rates, for instance, of death, which is caused by medical malpractice and misdiagnosis, it's astronomical. All right. I mean, it's extremely high. And that's with all sorts of built-in technical safeguards, which are designed to protect human life. Right. And yet still, this is a massive problem. You don't just want to have a doctor because he's a doctor. That's one of the few professions that you can say that of. You know what I mean? That and maybe a carpenter. You don't want a bad carpenter. You know what I mean?
Because he can send you to the doctor.
He can send you to the doctor. Right?
Subpar carpenters and doctors. That's your placard sign. We shall open up soon to the call-ins.
Now make them wait. It's good for them. And by the way, would you mind
Patience is a virtue.
If I briefly took a second to read off some super chats, Posh? Would that bother you?
Of course not.
Okay, one comes in for 500 SEK, which is about 50 American dollars. I've learned this currency now because I've made fun of this, people who send it in multiple times. But I really appreciate the super chat very much. Very large super chat. He says, love the Crucible. Keep up the good work. Continue to send in your life savings to the Crucible. It's important that you do this so that we can continue to be the frontline razor edge in the cultural fight against the degens. Moving over to the super chat side. Now, remember, Posh, you're gonna have to like this quite a bit, because remember I said that everything that comes in on the super chat side today on Dono goes to helping you in your front for the war effort. 1 second, let me pull these up. They didn't send you any, Posh. They say, I'm kidding, they did. $5 comes in from Randy West, who says, for a couple of months rent to you, Posh. $10 comes in from Sarcastic Warlock, says 2 quarts of water to fuel the aristocrat Posh's toilet. It's pretty good.
That reminds me of the war in the 90s.
Yeah. $10 comes in from Sparuski Lady, who says, cheers. Appreciate that very much. $10 comes in from Anonymous. 6-pack to get the familial Royal Rumble started. I don't feel like it's too much of a Royal Rumble, but rather a really good conversation with, I think, subtle disagreements, which, by the way, I don't really get to have conversations with intelligent people that often, because I'm usually beating the hell out of degens verbally. So I do enjoy the chance to do so. $10 comes in from Anonymous, who says, seems like the very idea of a political party is just a secular replacement for the church and crown. I wonder if Freemasons planned for this or not, leading up to the revolutions. That's a pretty wide berth of history which goes into that. But yes, almost every type of club like the Freemasons is always a replacement for church. $4 comes in from motherfucker who said,
what happened? Okay, is it on my end or Andrew's end? I mean, I said just a moment, I didn't mean for this to happen. Okay, until the things stabilize, I'll respond to the thing. You will notice how etymologically, how many things are derived from ecclesiastical and monarchical terminology. When you talk about counties, for example, just a very simple one, that you've got counts, which are on the lower end of the feudal order, but still feudal order. Deans, that's a shorthand for deacons, etc., etc. Oh, are we getting Andrew back? I'm going to say his dog chewed through the internet cable. Because why not blame dogs for everything? I'm very fond of it. Andrew's a statue now. Well. All the jokes about Serbian internet, and yet here we are. Okay, things are... we'll wait for him to come back. I'm a man of patience. But we'll see. I don't know if his stream crashes or not. That could be a problem. But we'll see. Do I have to sing Irish songs again? Is this my punishment? Just keep singing Irish songs. Oh, goodness. Neurojack says, I'm about to go to church. As you should. As you should, Neurojack. My internet is trash today. I'm surprised others have issues. Well, you know, we were talking about education failing, but I do suppose you can just get trade to work with these types of electronic devices. You don't necessarily need a PhD to set them up. So go ahead and sing, Posh. Can I jump on and say the thing while we wait? Well, I suppose. Because I don't know how long it will take. Let me see if I've got a message from him. To be sure. No. Well, okay. I'll let you on Neurojack. And then not let other people on until if he doesn't come back, because I want to keep it because you want to finish up his super chats, and I think that's the only fair thing to do. So if you want to jump on, please wait a bit longer. Neurojack messaged me prior to the stream and said he had a short thing to say, but it was very important. So it's more for biding time rather than letting people on properly, because it's not fair for Andrew not to be here. Keep up the riffraff. We're having 36 degrees tomorrow in late September, which is not unheard of, but pretty rare. So it's rather warm for this time of day. Neurojack needs to start streaming. Every time he calls in, he is with his children. So I'm not sure if he can. Here he is.
Here I am. Hey, Posh. How are you?
I am well. So, as I said, you want to say something important? I think it can fill up the time before Andrew can manage to fix things.
Yeah, and I actually wish that that Andrew was here, because I think some of this will pertain to him. So, you and I have been talking, and I'm going to Orthodox Church because of you and Jim Bob. Laying out the theology, and it really changed my life in a lot of ways. And so I want to say thank you for that. And again, and yeah, and normally I would kind of come on here and just tease out the details and stuff like that, but I pretty much agree with everything that you guys were saying. And normally I would have something to add to it, but I'll just tell a quick story, because I've had some odd interaction recently. So there's a guy named James Lindsay who did a podcast maybe about a month ago, and he was basically doing something about Christian nationalism, and he was implying that there was like occultist influences on people who were claiming to be Christian nationalists, and like Marxist ideology and Hegelian ideology. And so I listened to it, and I thought it was interesting. And around that same time, I was starting to, Machine Lies reached out to me and asked me to come and, join him on panels because he and I have similar views on technology and everything like that. So very briefly, Chalk Body Outline and Enslaved by Truth invited me to their Discord and invited me on some of their panels, and I appreciated it. And again, long story short, as I started to do this, I started getting harassed by certain people and Machine Lies as well. And I don't know exactly what's going on, but like yesterday, in a private conversation, I basically got like threatened to be doxxed by some guy named Toilet Bowl Earth and his friend Rusty Shackleford. They're kind of like basically joking about like doxing and swatting me. And I don't think it's a joke because it's private conversation where they're saying this stuff. And so I just wanted to let everyone know what's going on because, I don't really appreciate that very much. And I think that we should, as Christians, we have to kind of keep our house clean as well. These guys have nothing Christian about them, and, some of these people are saying they're like former members of like OTO and stuff like that. So, all I know is like, I'm just a guy asking questions and I'm a Christian and I really don't appreciate fellow Christians like attacking me and like threatening my family. And I want to let everyone know who they are and what they're doing because it's like, it's really wrong. And, as Christians, we're supposed to, I told these guys like, hey, I don't want my country and I don't want my my religion to be subverted. You know what I mean? And so what have I done to, attack anybody? Nothing. And they were also like saying that Andrew and Rachel and Jim Bob and all these guys are like, feds or something like that. And yeah. And it's like, okay, so, and now they're attacking me personally. And I know that Andrew has had experience like this too. And it's like, I'm no one, like, I'm just a guy like, coming here and talking about stuff. So it's not about me. Don't feel sorry for me. I just want everyone to know publicly, like, what's going on. And I don't blame, Chalk Body or Enslaved by Truth, but their silence on it is kind of like, to me, it's like, they're signing on to it. So I don't appreciate it. And I just want to let everyone know, like, watch out for these, psychopaths. That's all I got to say. I appreciate it.
No problem. You need to be careful with people who believe they're the Messiah. They get, as I said about the vote being the Messiah complex token. The people who get it into their minds that they're saving the world are rather dangerous people. But as Vampire Frog says, that Lindsay was critiquing a specific movement called Christian nationalism, made by a dude that was on Tucker, not Christian nationalism in general. It's a name clash similar to domain SQU. But that's what he said, that it was, you can name a movement something that already bears the name of a much broader topic. So again, just sorry that you had to go through such things, but beware of people who think they're saving the world. They tend to be on the less sane side.
Yeah, and I hope you heard what I said, Andrew. And I just want to let you know, like,
I have no idea. For some reason, my internet winked out of existence for no particularly good reason for like 5 minutes. So
dogs.
Yeah, I'll briefly just basically, the people who were attacking you, calling you like, a Fed and Freemason. They basically like threatened to dox and swap me, and I just wanted to make it public. Toilet Bowl.
what? Wait, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about, bro.
Like Chalk Body Outline and Enslaved by Truth, and their friends Toilet Bowl Earth and Rusty Shackleford. Rusty says he goes to like one of these guys' churches, and I'm not going to try to dox the guy, but I'll privately send you who he's saying he's associated with. Because they're trying to like threaten to dox and swap my house now, and they say it's a joke, but it was a private conversation. So, and I'm like a no one, you know what I mean? So I just want everyone.
People, what are they? They're threatening me?
No, me.
Oh, okay. Well, how did I don't know. How did all this happen?
Well, basically, I was just being inquisitive and I was just staying on Jim Bob's panel for the most part, but I got invited to go join these other panels, and basically they told me to shut up about Christian nationalism and shit like this, and I was like, okay. And then then yesterday they had a private conversation with me and basically like jokingly inferred supposedly that they want to dox and swat me. You know, they said, oh, I think somebody will dox you. I think somebody will swat you. So like, you know, not illegally doing it, but just kind of like making the implication of it, you know? And I just want people to know, it's like, there's no call for that. And, you know, whether they think it's a joke or not, it's like, I don't take it as a joke, you know? And I'm just saying, like, as Christians, we have to keep our house clean, you know, like these people have nothing.
Why do they want to, what do they want to do that to you for anyway?
They said because I'm like, because people that I associate with like Machine Lies and stuff like that question Christian nationalism and question people like Jay Dyer. Like, you know, I don't even have that much of an opinion on it. I'm just like asking questions and find it interesting, right? Like, I don't even make claims, but then the guy comes, but then they like basically in a private conversation like threaten me, you know, like, and they try to do it like very carefully, like a lawyer. They try to say it very carefully, but I'm just saying it's like if somebody comes up, and I know that you've had experience with that, so I just wanted to like make that known to people. Like, these people are like crazy, and I'm not saying Chalk Body or Enslaved did that, but these guys are like their friends or whatever. And you know, for me, it's just like, I don't know what their deal is, but they were like trying to say stuff about you. Now they're coming after me, and I really don't appreciate it at all. It's like, I just want people to publicly know who they are in case they do that to somebody else.
Yeah, but like, who cares? They're worthless trolls. They have nothing useful to say about anything. Like, Toilet Bowl Earth's always been a useless troll. I've never cared about anything he said because he's a worthless troll. His whole job is just to troll people, right? That's all he wants to do online.
It's a good name, though.
Yeah, EBT's always been fine with me. He doesn't.
Oh yeah,
he used to do a little bit more of the chat diversion, but he settled down with that shit. But yeah, Toilet Bowl Earth's always just been kind of a piece of shit. So what do I care?
Yeah, I know, and it's fine. I just want people to know, it's like, you know, I take it as a joke, and I don't think any of us should. It's like, and I know you've experienced that, Andrew, as well. So like, I just want people to know, like, it's not a joke. If people threaten your family and your life, whether they say it as a joke or not, it's like, it's not a joke, you know. And it's we should just be. These guys are claiming to be Orthodox Christians, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm about to go to my Orthodox church right now and talk to my priest. So it's like, you know, it's like, why would you attack fellow Christians, you know? And I think that I agree with everything that you guys were talking about Christian nationalism, but I just want people to be aware, like, we should be careful about these like psychopaths who are claiming to be Christian and like trying to make us look like we're psychopaths too. You know what I mean? So that's all I have to say on it.
Oh yeah, they're just low tier trolls, dude.
As I said to him, you weren't here, Andrew.
Like,
if they believe they're saving the world
with low tier trolls because they're low tier trolls. You know what I mean? So some of that's on you because they're literally
the trolls.
Yeah, they're literally low tier trolls, and they're only fun to mess with. And outside of that, they're not even fun to talk to. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not fun to talk to. TBE talks out of both sides of his mouth constantly, and his whole thing is just to derail and cause as many problems as possible. That's like his shtick. You know what I mean? So it's like, some of it's kind of on you. Like, don't engage with those people. They're fucking worthless people. They've always been worthless. I've never found any engagement with Toilet Bowl Earth to be in any way useful whatsoever. I don't think he's an intelligent guy. I don't think he has anything smart to say. And I don't think that he's very entertaining either. I don't think he has any of those things going for him.
This is why with Orthodoxy, we always talk about your parish. You go to your parish, that is where you engage mostly. The moment people, as I said, start thinking that they're going to save the world or something, and then they start thinking, oh, this guy has even mild disagreements, you know, they can spin that into the whole idea, you're a fed, you're this, you're that. Focus on your local parish. It's fine. I mean, I'm engaging with Andrew. We're not on the same continent, but you know, be very cautious about people who are rather, I don't know how to say, so low key, as low key as possible, but present enough to try and cause disruption and things. You don't know whether it's a troll or whether it's one of these deranged, you know, saving the world people who think they finally discovered the elixir that's going to heal the world, because you can't reason with them. There's no reasoning with them.
Yeah, and I just want to say again, thanks for having me on, and sorry to derail your thing, but I just want people to be aware that of what's going on, because you know, we are trying to have really important conversations like Andrew talked about, and it's important that we continue to do so. productive way, not in a psychotic way. So God bless you guys, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, take care, man.
Thank you for calling in. God bless.
Yeah.
Stop feeding the trolls, bro.
Yep, one of the oldest rules on the internet.
Yeah.
Don't feed the trolls. So, are things back in function? Did you want to finish the super chats?
I think
I don't know if you have.
I don't know
access
what's the last one that we ended on. I don't know.
Oh goodness.
I think we're okay. I'll check them again before we're done, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. Are you going to do that now, or
no? We can keep going with the, program. We'll do it again.
Okay, so I'm letting people call in. I said just Neurojack until you resolve your issues. I didn't want, people calling in like the atheist skeptic. The most creative name in internet, intelligentsia. But we'll see. So people can call in. We're just talking about the on topic. We talk about Christian nationalism. If you have other topics you'd like to start, that we're going to do that on a different stream. So please, just on the topic, because I will have to remove you, and especially because, as I said, we want to let David Patrick Harry have a birthday stream. As Jim Bob says, I got swatted by ortho priests and they kicked the door in and blessed my house. I could see that happening. So there were people who were saying they wanted to confront the idea, calling us Christ tards.
That's fine.
No, it's not. I'm devastated by it. I don't know how.
If it's not blood sports, then what the hell am I even doing here anyway? Bring them on.
Fair enough.
It's just going to be this. It's just going to be, is God real? God not real though. God not, which literally has nothing even to do. It's funny because it actually has nothing to do even with the proposition of Christian nationalism, but that's the only criticism that they can levy. It's like, okay, well, democracy not real either. It's a social construction, but okay, fine. We'll just do that.
Right. I mean, he's going to debunk us, and I'm waiting to be debunked. We had, you saw the Dillahunty Hikikachu debate, or at least the best part of it.
You mean where they were about to fist fight?
Yes. First of all, the debate itself is just gloriously retarded. But then we have that moment, why don't you come and say it here? And Matt does. Matt looks like he's about to have a heart attack at any given moment in time. And he made the Chad Muslim guy look like a wimp. So it's glorious. And the edit by Diaclips, just... Okay, we have Georgia. He's not going to be against us. Hello, Georgia.
Hello, brother, Serbian brother, and hello, Irish man.
Hello, Irish.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't catch that. You must be using Serbian technology. Sorry.
No. Serbian technology fall apart like with Tesla.
Do you think you can switch from your 1990s ear pods so that we can hear you? That'd be great.
No, I use Chinese mic. Like they have cheapest technology because we have cheapest.
Well, can't you just go comb the local garbage dump for better stuff, man? Like, what's going on here? This is terrible.
I mean, maybe if we went to Western Europe, but right now I'm in Serbia, so I cannot.
Yeah. Even our black market sucks.
I mean, in Serbia we call it gray market. Like we have black market, gray market, and white market. Like
I'm surprised you guys have markets. I'm like, that's stunning to me.
Like bazaars.
I thought you just waited for them for like low flying, NATO aircraft to be malfunctioning, and then when they just blow everything out of the cargo hatch, you guys just descend on it for all of your supplies for your nation. If I was wrong about that?
Yes, we sometimes drop Turkish and stuff like
that. So, Georgia, is there anything you want to comment on the topic?
Well, my topic would be like if we look from Orthodox perspective, like I can see that many Orthodox nations actually, let's say Greeks, Bartholomew, and so on, there is theology where they deny nations, So they would say it is not Serbian Orthodox Church, but Orthodox Church of Serbia. Like it is not of Serbs, like Srpska pravoslavna crkva, nego pravoslavna crkva Srbije. So, and that can be a big difference, because to us Serbs, like we live in Montenegro, we live in Serbia, we live in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we say that church is for beyond national boundaries. But Greeks see it as state is what defines nation, and I basically don't see. I don't see it like that. I believe that nationhood is more than just statehood.
Okay. So, as Andrew said, the topic is more about the culture of the place. So, obviously, jurisdiction in the Orthodox Church is not about ethnic affiliation or whatever. It's about where the jurisdiction is located, etc. Right? Because you can say we're not the Serbian Orthodox Church, but you can call us Pečka Patriarchia, like the Patriarchate of Peć. As much as you say the Jerusalem Patriarchate or the Antiochian Patriarchate, etc., etc. But ironically, the Greeks, I believe, are still the only ones which have priests count as actually government employees. You know, when officials in the government give their vows, they hold up the three fingers and everything like that. But they have fallen to a far more liberal state of mind than we, especially the Slavic patriarchates, because we are just gloriously hard-headed about everything. So that's great. So, Andrew, what do you think? Do you think because it's a socio-cultural movement, it's not necessarily going to have to be about the governmental structure, but how you apply the ethics within that structure?
I think one follows the other. So I think that if your population is moral and ethical, that the government will always reflect that. And I think that this is kind of seen over and over and over and over again as a trend. I'm not even sure how much you have to mess with the governmental element other than to try to press them to reflect the moral value structures of the populace. So the populace is demanding that you outlaw pornography and outlaw these types of horrific things. The government must necessarily respond. They don't have a choice, be it a democracy, monarchy, whatever what have you. So I do think that it is sociocultural, but that all cultural values are informed by theology. So I think you have to start at the point that you have to start at. And this is the point that we have to start at, is what is the effect of culture before we can ever get to a single prescription inside of any type of government that you might propose. The first thing is that you have to have a population which is moral.
I would say that not just moral population, we need telos, we need purpose to that population. That population needs to look for some purpose. Like today,
yes, an anti-material purpose. I agree that that's true. The thing is, though, is that I do think that that's foundational to Christian ethics. I don't think that you can hold Christian ethics and be a materialist at the same time, or you're not actually holding to Christian ethics.
Yes, many church fathers that wrote about symphony of church and state, they clearly state that Christian state need to have purpose in saving more and more lives. And if they are not saving people's souls, then it is not Christian state, basically.
Yeah, that actually makes sense to me. I think the proposition for now needs to stay fairly limited and targeted. We can massively overreach our position, and our position right now is highly unstable and unflattering because the people who represent Christian nationalism are very unflattering people for the most part, and they try to bring in other types of mechanisms for their agendas that have nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. And I think that that's highly problematic. So we're already in a precarious position to begin with. But not only that, if we're going to target these sorts of kind of cultural spinback problems that cause such a festering in the undercurrent of culture, then we need to be very precise with how we target that and what it is that we're proposing. We can only do this in minute ways, granularly over time. This is not going to be a great shift quickly. There may come a time where, the snowball rolls into an avalanche, and that all happens very quickly, but it's going to take time. And it needs to be, we need to pick our targets, right?
To your point, sorry, Giorgio, to your point, Rachel says that's not even an option in America. We started as a British colony, but have never had a homogenous nationality. We have been mixed ethnicity from the start. Sorry, Wignats.
She's right.
And I would agree. There is something called ethnogenesis, when the birth of a nation, basically, when a nation sort of brings in, becomes a singular thing. If you look at France, for example, the Northern French and the Southern French are not going to be identical ethnically, but they are both French. Why? Because nations are actually formed around more or less religious, how should we say, underpinnings. And if you don't have that, which sort of is the problem in America, due to such a negative, not in the, as opposed to affirmative, not positive necessarily, but a negative statement. We're not the British, right? We don't do these things. We don't do these things, but the other part is more or less open-ended. And I think that sort of prevented America from having an idea other than, oh, we love freedom and democracy and things like that. So I think the only thing that can have a unifying force behind things is religion. That is what an ethnicity is traditionally. It's a very modern concept that has to do with genetics, because genetics is also rather recent as far as the field of science.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head with almost all of what you just said there, Posh. And I would just kind of reiterate again that we're in a very precarious position where we're on a knife's edge. And if we're going to deliver a message like this, then we need to make sure that the message that we're delivering is well understood, and that the people who are delivering it are not social pariahs who are trying to mix in other things that don't do us any good as we become the architects of a message that is counter to the current culture. And that's how your message becomes infiltrated and then completely devastated, because people capture it and then they add shit to it that was never the intent of the message to begin with. So you have to be very, very cautious on that front. You know what I mean? And I don't think that I'm pushing for some type of wide societal prescription, because we just can't have that. This has to be gradual change over time. There's just no way around that.
I mean, there is a way around it. If we had like Great War, like First and Second World War, I'm not.
That's exactly the kind of message that you don't want to be delivering.
No, but
it's exactly the kind of message you don't want to be delivering at all. That's my whole point by saying that, right? We don't want that message.
Look how Europe shifted after First and Second World War. Like it was total moral shift, total shift to new ideas. So I mean, we should avoid First and Second World War. I'm not pro it, but if you want fast change, like, look for opportunities.
Yeah, well, that could be part of a cultural avalanche, which could happen quickly. I don't dispute that that's true, right? But I would not count on it. I would not count on there being some type of, everybody always counts on some type of catalyst event, and they just seem to wait around on their hands for this catalyst event that seems to never materialize. And when it does, it seems that the opposition is entrenched to the point where they can take advantage of it, and we can't. So I think it's far wiser for us to begin to start moving the goals where we want them now, in a granular and subtle way, so that we can start to move a message like that forward.
I mean, we can look at Christians from first century. They would be much closer to your idea, where they gradually became majority of Roman Empire, and
Yeah.
they gradually gained political power and so on. But what most important thing is that they were ready to die for it. Like, Roman soldiers were killing them, and they were still saying, "We believe in that." So,
Well, I don't think that the persecution of Christians in the United States is not on the horizon, because it is. Right.
so if you want your idea to be strong, you yourself need to be strong. You cannot say, "I want to go to Walmart to buy cheap things, so I will take the mark of the beast or stuff like that. I will take jabbies, or I will become part of LGBT community because I want to win gold medals on
I don't
Olympic
dispute any of that. I think that
or
that's
so on."
Yeah, I think that that's correct. I think that you have to set the same example that you expect other people to follow. And I don't think that I hold people to a higher, kind of a higher standard than I hold myself to. So I think ultimately that you are making a good and valid point there. But before you can even get to that, you have to at least organize to the point where people have some kind of message that they want to push, which is a good message, not something that's completely convoluted and polluted and taken over by kind of these exterior elements, which are there specifically to subvert it.
And there's also the element of different theological systems. If you're going to be some type of Calvinist, where you believe in predeterminism, if you're going to be a Lutheran, you don't believe in free will. If you're going to be, those things are going to play out in your thinking and in your actions.
It's true.
So if you don't hash out things, when people say, "Oh, Christians need to unite in order to fight degeneracy or something," that can only be done in a very limited way.
That,
and
well,
it's
so
going to be
there,
more of a political sense.
Yeah, there's sense to what you're saying when you're talking about the foundational aspect. From a political sense, it makes less sense. So from a political sense, in a democracy, we do have to have a voting bloc. So there's nothing actually wrong, I think, with reaching out to Protestants who agree with us on abortion in order to form a voting bloc to get abortion banned. I don't see why that would be problematic. Certainly not ecumenism. It's a political prescription that favors both of us. I think that those types of things are fine. I think that if you're moving towards other prescriptions, so groundational, grounding prescriptions, though, that's where you end up with these kind of mass problems. But luckily, I don't think that we ever really have to face too many of those, at least not immediately, because politics is very surface level. It's very, very, very surface level. And so if all we're really trying to do is have a collection of a voting bloc, which can vote together at least to kind of ban porn because we agree with the Calvinists that it should be banned, it doesn't mean we're endorsing their theology. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? But we still do have to affect the political aspects inside of our nation. We don't have a choice there.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello, Rusty Smackleford.
Hey, so I just wanted to clear the air because Neurojack was on here earlier and he made an outright false statement. He said that I threatened to dox him. I never did that. I never would do that. I've never doxed anybody. So I just want to make it very clear that he's lying. And I'm right here to say it. I don't respect that he did that. That's all I have to say about it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, we're not going to develop that topic. You've made your statement.
But he said it, so I just wanted to rebut it.
Yeah,
that's all.
Fair enough, and I agree. You should have your right to say it.
All right.
But we're short on time. Do you have something to say about the topic?
I'm sorry, buddy. He got me fired up by saying that. I had to respond. That's all I had.
Okay,
but
okay.
Yeah, I do like both your guys' shows, especially Andrew's. I find it pretty entertaining. I'll talk to you guys later. God bless.
Have a good day, man.
God bless you. Okay. So yes,
But,
go ahead.
but problem with alliances, let's say blocks, I would say that many priests, many bishops, many people will start believing that because we are together, we can go to churches and so on. So when you start making a political connection, it can bring problem to populace where they will believe
Yeah.
that finally we are uniting, finally we are together, and so on. So then bishops and priests need to be political people and to show
Yes.
people, no, we are just doing this because of politics. So we and explain them during service politics how this is good for them, but we are not uniting. So like it can make some problem even if we don't want it. Like
So
it could
Yeah,
make
but
some
here's the
problem.
thing, right? Just talking about the potentiality, right? There's no end to the potentiality for problems which we can come up with or foresee as being potentials that may happen. But we know for sure that if we don't do anything, that we're assured destruction. And that's just the truth. Now, that doesn't mean that you should err on, well, we just have to do something for the sake of doing it. However, I do think that you would largely agree with me, and I don't see how anybody could make a good, concise, logical argument that if you're inside of a Western democracy and you're Orthodox and you can vote, and voting is about blocks for power, if somebody is going to vote alongside you politically, regardless of what their personal beliefs are, what choice do you have?
what I think
Uh,
George is
I
trying
could
to say is that here in Serbia, for example, if you see an Orthodox bishop with a Catholic bishop, there's no, oh, maybe we're trying to get things done on this. It's always like, oh no, oh God, he's betraying us to Rome. We're all going to be subverted by the papacy.
yeah.
And even if you made, let's say, try to make an alliance against abortion, people will, I guarantee it, it's not maybe, people will take that as, oh, they're trying to use abortion as a sort of a
Well, I mean, certainly, but
a stepping stone.
the thing is that kind of plays into my point. You're
Yeah,
always going to have critics, regardless of any action that you take. I have tons of my own. Clergy will always have tons of their own, et cetera,
yeah,
et cetera.
especially clergy.
Everybody's always going to have their critics. I still think that it seems to me that it's fundamentally wise that if you're not praying with these people, you're not mixing your value structures in. If you can both agree that we should have a sidewalk so that we can walk down the street, it doesn't seem like it's ecumenism to vote to build one. That just seems silly to me.
I believe the
I mean,
only solution is to try, when the clergy get together from the Orthodox Church and the Catholic and maybe the Anglican or wherever, to make it clear, to just say we don't intend on intercommuning or something,
Right.
which is again going to make certain people upset. But you have to stick with your conservative base. That's your actual base. You know, the liberals are not going to take you seriously either way. They're probably going to be against you going after abortion. So, you know, you try to do the best you can, but I believe if there's anything that can be done as sort of coming together from different theological systems, it's the negative things like being against abortion, being against the LGBT nonsense, being against something. That's, I think, where the crux is.
Yeah, I agree.
I can help Andrew point basically with some history facts. During I believe First World War, you have a saint from Orthodox Church. His name is Nikolai Velimirovich, and he would actually go
Second World War, not first.
No, he's in Second World War. He was in the high. He was close.
Okay, but you said first, so I didn't want people to be confused.
But I'm speaking when he was going to English Anglican.
Okay.
So that was first, I believe. So he was going to Anglican churches and actually preaching how we should fight against Germans and so on. And in England, they would call him Serbian Fourth Military, like Fourth Army. And he allied with England Church that they allowed Orthodox people to have their services in Anglican Church. So you have during times of First World War, Anglican Church and Orthodox Church uniting for the greater good, and
Yes.
even saints. So Nikolai Velimirovich is saint in our church. So when you are saying we should fight abortion, you can always recall, like, yeah, but in First World War you have Nikolai Velimirovich that did that against.
Yeah, there are great points to be made about fighting against evil of some sorts, where stopping a certain action or a program is more important than worrying about whether people will freak out about ecumenism, because you can ally with people who, you know, if you see someone trapped under a tree fell on their legs or something, you're not going to check the theological system of the person next to you to see if you can go and try and save that person. That's much more of an immediate reason to act. So, sorry?
Except if he is Muslim.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, why did we
Or
make
Serbian,
all those songs?
or Serbian.
What's with all the cool songs from the 90s? Okay, sorry, Jimbo, but Athanasius was here first.
No, of course.
So go ahead, Athanasius.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? First of all?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm right next to a lathe. So anyway, one of the questions that I'm not sure if you guys had brought up, because I'm trying to listen while working, but as I understand it, in a monarchy, you know, the king that is chosen comes from a lineage chosen by God, correct? So how would there be a king chosen in a monarchy, right? Christian nationalism in America, if that's what we're talking about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we haven't really touched on monarchy, but maybe just to correct the presuppositions that you might have. Just because a child is born to a king, even in systems where a church was heavily involved in the state or even was the state, just because a child was born to a king did not mean that they necessarily thought that he had a God-given right to rule. The church had to weigh in on these things, and the church often did in many European nations expressly forbid some of these princes from becoming kings because they did not think that they were fit to rule. So you have to take kind of this synergistic relationship into account of how this works. You can almost think of the church like a fourth branch of government, but a silent partner in a way. It's a foreign concept to people. Now, I don't personally advocate for monarchy, but I at least try to understand the system as best I can for what it is that other people are trying to advocate for. And no, it's not just, hey, you have a child, and so once you have a child to a king, he's automatically going to become king. That's never been how it worked. Not even biblically was that how it worked.
Exactly. And there's also different systems. You know, the Anglican idea of the divine right to rule is not universal. And then you had more of a Frankish system. Here, Byzantines had their system, but it's not always like lineages. Although when we think of feudalism, we think of Frankish feudalism, right? That is the idea we have both aesthetically and in terms of how it operates. But it doesn't have this idea that you have a special lineage already, because God, as he shows throughout the Old Testament, you know, he appoints first Saul, right? He says, okay, you want someone big and strong, right? And handsome and stuff. Okay, here's Saul for you. See how that works out. And what happens with him? He of course goes is under the influence of powers, right? And then he is replaced with David. Jim Bob, I'm going to have to mute you.
Sorry. I'll mute me. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you guys could hear that.
Okay. So you had David replace him, right? And then Solomon and stuff. But it's not this legalistic system, because different circumstances call for different solutions. But how that would be done in the United States, there's so many preceding steps that have to be undergone to get to the point where you make the decision who is going to be, that it's might as well be looking at beans and stuff to predict the future. It's pointless to try and think of something, because again, things would change so much until you get like let's say a critical number of people to get monarchy implemented, that you would that then you would have the ability to choose.
Right. So he's saying the ingratiation of the culture would have to be such over a long enough period of time that they embrace that to begin with, and so the concept would not feel foreign to them like it feels to us. That's kind of the outset that Posh is talking about there.
Right, and so in a Christian national society, the governing body would still be a republic. Is that, or are we not even getting to a governing body at this point?
Yeah, likely.
Right. Like you say, there's going to be a long period of steps, just to change the society enough
trying to
be able to prepare them for this.
Trying to radically move into the zone of trying to eliminate the republic and voting rights for all and things like that. That's not an overnight thing any more than communist infiltration was an overnight thing. It's a gradual thing, which comes with a conscious shift first, and then that moves over to the legislative body as well. And so it's a longer process, just like all politics are. We should be planning this generation of Christians for a 150 year long prolonged idea war of attrition, essentially,
right? Such
just
as
like
the
communists did. Yes, exactly, just like the communists did. We should be preparing for the exact same thing, and we should accept the fact that we've likely lost. Our generation has lost. I can accept that that's true because it's true, but that does not mean with the birth rate crisis that needs to be forever the case.
As we know, the Fabian Society first attacked the education system, and they infiltrated the colleges and then on down to the elementary schools and so forth. The younger they could get them, younger the indoctrination, the better, right? So as Christians, how do you see us doing this? Because I see it as homeschooling, keeping them inside the home, keeping their values close to family and close to the church,
but also
and being
instilling in them a duty, and that their duty is to go to where these large systems are and begin to subvert them. That is their job. They are a subversion element, and that should be instilled as a duty.
Can I bring
in
up?
Fact, you had told me that I think Andrew, I think you were the one that brought this to mind for me. That I was unaware that my children would be able to participate in their local school activities such as sports and whatnot, because we pay the taxes for them. So whatever your local school is, they can go and contribute or participate in them. So that's an excellent way.
Be very careful when you select things, but I've never heard that that's the case. So that's good news.
That is the case.
Yes, yes, it is, because my wife had investigated that, and that is the case. So that is an excellent way to take your teachings and the teachings of the church and put them right into the public education system and right next to these children who are their peers.
Right. You can participate, right, because you're already funding it, but you don't have to be a part of it. You don't have, you know what I mean? You don't have to allow the indoctrination to flow, but you can still get the things and the activities out. So your kids aren't little weirdos or whatever they want to fucking call them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I have a child that my wife has just started to homeschool, and we've gotten her into all kinds of programs and looking at all kinds of the different communities and yeah, you can definitely get them into the public, and they're not going to be weirdos. They're not going to be someone who's not part of culture, and I guess well, participating in.
Now, remember that the only reason, though, that those things are allowable is because the people who came before, who fought for the ability to homeschool, literally demanded that those things be present. So, like, we kind of owe them a debt of gratitude for doing that. And that is a way in which we can kind of point to how you can gradually shift the culture so that people like you are enabled to live their values better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what you're saying is the first steps are to increase the birth rate and raise them as Christians and homeschool them and keep them away from these indoctrination centers and
then
do this for decades.
And then prepare them to
do this
enter.
for decades.
Yes, and do it for decades and prepare them to enter back into those indoctrination centers with a whole new line of indoctrination.
Exactly. Okay. My bad about my initial presupposition about the monarchy. Anyway, that's all I have. I'll let you guys go. God bless.
Thanks, man. Best of luck to you.
And you're going to be baptized soon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, October 7th. I am very much looking forward to it. Anyway, thank you all.
I hope you report in after that.
I will.
Okay,
all right, thank you.
God bless.
Goodbye. God bless.
All right, James Robert.
Hello. Apologies if my out of the blue rescheduling yesterday messed you guys up.
No, we're fine, as you can see.
I know Andrew's like, he's got his whole calendar filled up now, so it's like
it's fine. It's been ridiculous. So I've been offered now. I think I'm on the I'm in the 20s now of jobs from different networks, different offerings from jobs from different networks who want me to either do radio or they want me to host a small TV show or various different things like this. And it's like, I'm just inundated with it at all times now. And it's become ridiculous. And I turn all of it down. Some of them, I think you would think I was crazy for turning down, but if I don't believe in the message that these people are pushing, then I don't want anything to do with it. I would much rather continue to grow organically like we have by building our own great content and that kind of thing. So, but it is true. We are pretty filled up all the time. And I literally blame Posh for all of this.
Yeah, why not?
As you should.
Yeah.
So my question it actually came up a little bit with Athanasius's question, is that, let's say the beginnings of Christian nationalism, let's just call it that it's Orthodox is taking the lead in this. You would get a natural segregation, right? And that wouldn't be a bad thing. It would just be a voluntary segregation. And suddenly there would be entire communities where you might be able to draw a vague borderline around it, where you knew you entered into a predominantly Orthodox community, right, of people. So that I would see that as a good thing. Now, like Andrew said, your job is to go out and not only subvert, but share, try to pull in, basically. And I was wondering if what it would look like in practice. Like, let's say there is a very established, concentrated physical location community of Orthodox, and then just outside of it, it got a little more secular and you kind of tolerated it, right? Is the idea that you grow out and take over, or pull in, or are those two the same exact thing?
So I think I understand your question pretty well. So what I think happens is this, and this is a kind of an organic thing. So let's point to such a community now. The Amish immediately comes to mind, of something of which you can draw the border out. However, the Amish don't want to move past that border. They're not continuously trying to recruit others in. Rather, they try to recruit from within by having lots of children. And they even have to compensate for the fact that many of those children are going to leave the Amish lifestyle. And so they have to kind of really, really pump them out, right, to keep this going. But here's the thing. From our perspective, let's assume that you had such a community, which was built in with kind of these vaguish borders surrounded by secularists. if you're having lots of children, those children are going to necessarily expand out. And so the whole point of why it's so necessary since the secularists aren't having children and we are, this gentleman who just called in is a perfect example of somebody who can live with secularist people, can allow their children to engage with them and go out and play sports and all these different things, while not allowing the indoctrination portion to infiltrate and seep into their child's brain. So when the child finally is, at the age where they need to go, 18, 19, 20 years old, they can be heavily prepared for the world without being indoctrinated with all these presuppositional values that the world tries to claim you must have in order to operate. And I think that those children are going to have much better lives. And through this example, and of course, if they're going to breed, et cetera, this naturally is going to be expansionary. That's its nature.
Yeah. And then as far as like actual in real life setting, we would assume that inside this sort of vague border, just like the Amish, there would be customs that are enforced fully, right? There would be customs that would be expected. Let's just take like decency
you would have
codes.
you'd have local codes, local laws,
Right.
just like you do in every municipality now. It's just that the overwhelming majority of people would have the same belief structure, so they wouldn't have any problems with these kinds of codes of conduct, which are necessary within these communities. That falls, by the way, right in line with the current constitutional values in the United States, and which have historically been here. So, for instance, the Midwest, when it was heavily Protestant, used to have what are called blue laws, and in some places still do. And what a blue law means you can't mow your lawn on Sunday, you can't go get alcohol on a Sunday, right? None of those things are allowed. They're heavily enforced even to this day in some sections of the nation. So there's actually nothing wrong with your local population having strict ordinances or codes of conduct, which they expect their population to obey.
Yeah, exactly. I could imagine that and being very workable. And I'm wondering that because we agree that the borders are somewhat nebulous, like what would happen right on the fray of the border? Like when, is the Christian position to almost try to socially enforce something if they knew they were on the outside of the border? You know what I mean? Because you can expect it collectively. You're in a place where everyone sort of agrees on what's let's say what's decent. Let's say like basic forms of like nudity or like indecency in public. Once let's say a cluster of that Orthodox community is just slightly, like you almost couldn't tell that you're fully outside of the community and into the secular world. My question is like, how would we navigate that little blurred area of where we're used to engaging in some sort of enforcement socially, and then we're in the sort of blurry area, but we still have this impulse to enforce? Is it just a different kind of enforcement? Is it softer? Is it more like
well, actually, those sorts of nebulous circumstances are exactly the circumstances I want to see more. So I want inside of those little nuanced areas for these fights to break out over what localized policy, prescription, or regulation should be. So I want whatever this little offshoot of whatever, let's just say for the purpose of the hypothetical, this small, tiny Orthodox group of, let's say, 50 people who have expanded past the community and are now living next to 20,000 secularists, right? Well, I want those people to be brawling with the secularists. That's what their job is, right? I want them to be voicing their concerns and going to the PTA meetings and really being assholes and being a thorn in the side of everybody who's around them to try to kind of shock them awake a bit. So like that type of community, not only would I say is going to happen, but it's kind of the goal, right? It's kind of the goal.
So Jim Bob, what you're thinking of is the borderlines, but borders are never eternal, much longer lasting if you have natural impediments to movement or something. But their entire system is legalistic. Our system is more participative, because you mentioned orthodoxy, right? So we don't have the view of that you just have a set of rules and you just go, right? Because that is going to be very context dependent. So what you do is exactly as Andrew said. You try to expand it. Now that's not always going to succeed. That's
And
you're
then
going
this
to
necessarily expands participation. That's the point.
absolutely. But you have churches, you have non-ecclesiastical, gatherings and stuff like that. One huge important thing, Georgia here will know, like in Serbia, a lot of things aren't necessarily the church, but the church is very active in them, and they're more social. Right, so that is the whole the whole point of participative, the participative idea of theology, is that it's not merely the rules that you haggle over; it's that the religion is tying you together, and in the only democracy in the Middle East, one huge element of their politics is that the conservative Israelites are having an untold number of children, while the secular ones are having none of them. So they're losing the demographics there, even in that regard. And the important thing is that you start swaying power over to your side. And if you're the only one reproducing, and you have the ability to defend yourself against the indoctrination system, which is how they recruit. They don't recruit through multiplication.
Then you necessarily win.
Yes,
unless
it's a historical inevitability.
Unless you fuck it up.
Yes. So
right?
If you are consistent, you win. Mm-hmm. It's not even about being very good at it. It's just not.
Yeah, you can't not, right? As long as you take away the recruiting method. And the recruiting method is going to be through indoctrination. And that's why the homeschool is so important to be tied into this, and why my wife works so rigorously on the project, these various homeschool projects, to get information out to people who want to engage in that. Her whole channel is full of information like that. And that's to cut off the recruitment mechanism from the enemy. The second portion of this is to understand that you are obeying God's laws by being married and by having children, and lots of them. That is an obedience to your church, and that is an obedience to God. And it's like, so these two things together, I think necessarily over an elongated period of time, which is actually just a blink of the eye, to be honest with you. We'll definitely be able to make a significant impact, man.
I have a tougher question here, and we might not be in the position to answer it at all, but if the church utilized ecumenism as a form of subverting the modern churches, in other words, what if they were using that as a platform to pull them in and then change their system? Is that just not a valid way of doing it? Or
do you ever see the original Batman movie with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson plays the Joker?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a great line in that movie where he says, if you dance with the devil for long enough, the devil doesn't change, the devil changes you.
Right. Yeah,
right. So kind of the principal point of why ecumenism could not actually be used this way as a subversive mechanism by any church, not just the Orthodox Church, is because whoever it is that you're dancing with is necessarily going to change you. Even if you change them, necessarily they're going to change you. Imagine for a second, even in your interpersonal relationships, how much has your mindset and viewpoints changed just interacting with me and me, you, or you and Posh and you. And now, even if your whole goal was to be as subversive as possible, and that was your only job, was like trying to bring us down, you know what I mean? Or get us to somehow agree with you or even discredit our message, there's really no possible way that the experience isn't going to change the way that you view things and the outlooks that you have.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I look at, even if you remove that element, let's say you didn't take that method, would it not even work to say try to implement portions of proper Orthodox practice, but then it would just be a mishmash, right? What I'm saying is, if you went to a church that was kind of off base, and you sort of gave them one or two practices at a time to kind of try it, would that also not work?
No, still wouldn't work. You would just be giving them then the same thing that Protestantism has always had, which is a potluck, right? It's a potluck of things to choose from. But so the Calvinist says, well, I'm going to choose predeterminism and the Trinity. And another one says, well, I'll choose free will, but Unitarianism. So they end up kind of picking and choosing in almost a buffet style potluck which theology they're going to accept and which not. And if, let's say, they do implement one, like just say one sacrament or something like this, the implementation of that sacrament would actually be sacrilegious for us to introduce to them because they would be doing it incorrectly. So what ends up happening is like there's no good way to utilize subversion this way. Now, subversion, I know, has a nasty connotation. It's like a nasty word or this or that. And the spirit in which I'm using the word is kind of satirical to draw the illustration between what the communists did and what my current proposal is. It's not really subversion. It's cultural change for the better. I just use the word because I think it's hilarious to use it in a satirical way that would piss off the commies. But ultimately, no, I don't think that you could do any type of religious potluck like this. I think what you would have to do instead is draw them off one at a time from their churches and just ask them to go check out Orthodoxy. Give it a chance and let's see.
Yeah, that's way simple. Yeah, the other thing I noticed when you're
Can I give an example, Jim Bob, of what you're saying? The problem with Giorgio left. So
it turns it into a technology. That's what I was going to say. It turns it in. If they did it that way, they would just be taking what works based on some arbitrary thing they had. Like, oh, I like that aspect, and that turns it into a pragmatic tool, and it perverts it.
But not just that. There was Father Thomas Hopko, the late Father Thomas Hopko, sort of wrote this letter about what it would take for a re-establishment of reunion between intercommunion between the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church. And a lot of the comments I saw under this video where he was reading those out were, oh, really? So we all have to change everything and you guys don't have to change anything? Right? Like it's some sort of, interchange. It's like some type of, mercantile exchange. No.
Well, if we give, what do you give?
Right? Yes.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
We'll remove the filioque, but you have to accept.
Let me try to meet you. Let me try to meet you halfway in the only perfected theology. Right? It's like that's the opposite of what you want under all circumstances. At least
you're
from
sort of
the Orthodox perspective.
Yes, you're sort of trying to establish an exchange where you give up nothing and they give up everything. That's
right.
That's different, and we can't have any other option. Otherwise, we're sacrificing the truth of orthodoxy for the sake of some type of.
I also think you can look as an example to gun rights. So we had, if you pretend that gun rights is a giant cake, right, or a giant pie, we had the entire pie. But every single time we compromised with the other people who wanted to take a slice away from the pie, they say, well, look at how much of the pie you had left. Well, we had the whole pie. And then every single time we compromise again, now we're left with a slice and they have most of the pie. Right.
You're supposed to feel grateful.
What the hell happened? And they go, well, that's compromise. Compromise is you had it all and now you give us stuff and we give you nothing. Right. It's that's not compromise. That's really just that,
and we are supposed to be the anti-gun people. that's the position we're supposed to be in. And again, Andrew doesn't mean subversion in the sense of lying to people about stuff.
Of course not.
He means being forthright, but again, as he said, it's also a meme, to use the word.
Yeah, it's satirical.
Yes, exactly. That's why I was
I mean, the subversive right just sounds awesome, doesn't it?
It does. It's also like the insurgency, like all of the rhetoric for like that you're using for the shows that you're doing. Like it's really effective because you're engaged in sort of a battle. And so it does make sense to you're actively subverting something you're subverting subversion, basically. So it's kind of like a meta.
Yeah, right. It's just like how intolerance won't be tolerated, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the whole meme of the thing, the whole satire of the thing is to say, if you can go in and subvert, and then you got to remember from the enemy standpoint, we are the subverters. You know what I
Yep.
mean? We really are.
Yes, because who is the subverter and who is the one being subverted is a matter of power politics.
And perspective.
I mean, exactly, because if you are currently gaining and these people want to stop you from gaining ground, you are going to have a problem trying to convince others that you aren't merely trying to be, what you're doing isn't mere subterfuge. And everyone is more than happy to attribute a malicious intent. Trying to say, oh, you don't actually believe in Christianity, you just believe this is a pathway towards more power or something. So I'm just going to have to say this. Dr. Crispy Rothschild is saying that Kotel is sort of, I think he's postponing the start. So we're going to be closing up here. And
okay, but before we do, why don't we do this and raid his chat?
Oh, well, he hasn't started yet.
Yeah, I know. But
I think he's sort of starting after we finish.
Yeah, do you know how to raid a chat?
No, I'm not a bloody Viking or something.
Who
founded Dublin, by the way?
We can send the entirety of our chats over to
yes,
his channel.
that's what I'm planning on. But I also wouldn't want him to stay so long because it's his birthday. I'm assuming he has plans in mind. So we should be closing up.
Yeah, I'm gonna head out, you guys. Thank
raiding chats breaking community guidelines of YouTube?
Hey, Andrew, I downloaded that.
Can you guys talk about that on the stream?
So you know.
Just a moment. What do you say, Jim Bob?
I was telling Andrew I downloaded the Blue Bricks app for our invasion of TikTok.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
That's happening.
Subversion intensifies.
Subversion intent. Eye lasers going. You know what I mean? Subversion intensifies.
God bless. See you guys.
God
Bye.
bless you, Jim Bob. Okay, Georgia, what did you say?
Well, isn't raiding someone against community guidelines?
No. If you're stream sniping them and then you raid them with a chat, yes, but we're actually going to redirect. YouTube has this feature for this reason, so we can redirect the entirety of our show chat into Kotel's chat.
Oh, okay.
It's an actual feature.
Yeah, I just use raid because that's what it's called on Twitch.
Yeah, you use it like you use subversively.
Yeah, subversive language. And I just wanted to say this, that I was thinking can Christian make some city like Amish have, so people can point and say, okay, if we have Christian nation, we can have all nation like that one city. So if that one Christian city is prospering more than rest of the nation, let's say similar like Texas and California. Like Texas right now we have low taxes and so on, and bunch of people are moving to Texas. So why cannot Christians create cities that are suitable for living and are actually, you can point at them, like you can point at Amish, you can point at Texas to show what your policies can do. So
yes, can I, Georgia, while you're here, can we give Andrew the etymological, fun fact that Texas in Serbian means denim? Did he freeze up again?
No, I'm listening.
Okay, you were just very still. So Texas in Serbian means denim. So if you have Texas košulja, it means like a denim shirt. So for those of you who don't know, the word Texas does go into different languages. I think in Norwegian they use Texas when something is like crazy. So that's a fun little thing. And Georgia, as a fellow Serb, can confirm.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Andrew, would you like to go through the rest of the super chats as we're closing off?
Yeah, I'm just setting this up so that we can send this all over to To
To
Kotel.
Kotel.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent.
So just 1 second here.
Okay. Also, our word for jeans is farmerke, which means like the farmer's like thing, outfit, you know. So that's always fun to discuss how things when things come from a different culture, you tend to associate them with a certain aspect. Okay, Isabel confirms that Texas means crazy in Norway. Thank you. I'm not just, talking out of my hat.
All right, let me
Especially
go through.
because I have a hat.
Yeah, let me go through the other dono chats here, Posh. I'm going to put you back up on screen. I just had to prop you down for just a second. So 1 second
Okay.
here. All right, here we go. $100 comes in, Posh, from John Doe. He says nothing. He just wanted to show support for the stream.
This is our favorite type of super chat over here at the Crucible.
Well, I didn't even have to say it. See how well trained you are? $5 comes in from Patricia Parsha, who says, what kind of democracy do you wish to establish? From the way you speak at times, it seems like you want limited voting rights to certain groups of people. Are you aiming for a form of democratic aristocracy? I think that I would limit voting rights as a good first steps program. Yes, though I wouldn't consider that to be aristocracy, as those voters can then be held to account for their votes, which I think is a key pivotal part that is missing inside of the current democratic system. The secret ballot, I think, is a horrible proposition.
You would never let secret voting be a part of the parliamentary voting.
No, you would never allow you wouldn't allow your politicians to do it, and you should be held to the same standards.
So, Andrew, I'll have to go to the loo real quick. Be right back.
Okay. $10 comes in from Into the Break, who says, this was one of the best discussions I've had the privilege of being privy to in a long time. Much respect and admiration. I wish I could give more. No, $10 is plenty. Thank you so much for your support of the Crucible. We appreciate it. I'm going to add up these super chats, and I will send over payment to Posh today, in fact, and just make sure that he gets them as I promised he would. Now, moving over onto the YouTube side, real quick, guys, just make sure that we didn't miss any there. All right. By the way, thank you, everybody who has become a member of the Crucible. We're up over 1,000 members now and still going strong. A lot of that thanks to Spyro, but a lot of you have upgraded your memberships. Many of you to the highest membership you can get, which is a Crucible Commander. We're going to be doing streams which are only available to people who are members of the Crucible, along with other great content, including skits and things like this. Really appreciate it very much. It really helps us out more than you could ever imagine, because we can always count on that income, at least for that month. So it helps me plan accordingly. So let's see. Spyro sends in a super chat and says, children who grow up around 2+ languages also have some advantages, particularly in having different or more creative ways of thinking. That doesn't surprise me. I've often said that I think that people's ideas are often limited to the language that they think in.
Can I give two things about that? One is Switzerland is a good example of a very multilingual state. First of all, it's small. Like the cantons aren't that big, and Switzerland itself isn't big. And they technically have 4 languages officially: French, German, Italian, and Romance. So that's one thing. And the Swiss are not particularly known for being unsuccessful. But on another thing I've also heard being theorized is that why you have people from China or Japan, for example, being so good at mathematics. And some have theorized that because of their writing system, right, Japanese and Chinese, they don't operate identically, definitely not. I mean Chinese, I mean Mandarin, basically, or Cantonese or something. But the way you learn to write, we have phonetic systems of writing. They have these logographs. So people have theorized that partly because of this, how you learn these logographs, that it helps you in certain aspects of cognitive activities.
This one, Posh, comes in again from Spyro, who says education has become a joke generally. I didn't finish high school, and I've accomplished more in my life than several people I grew up with. This is no shock to me, Posh.
Me neither. People show, especially when you have meritocracy being enforced by how good you can perform, as opposed to your like academic credentials, which can only be on paper. And especially when you have things like affirmative action and things, we know that if you look at a person who had been imposed with more difficulty to enter a college and finish it, like the Asians and whites, and then you have on the other side people who had boosts to their ability to enter and finish, the people who employ you are going to be on the side of those who have had more difficulties imposed on them. But likewise, as he said, if you don't have credentials but you give the desired output, what's the person to consider other than if it's illegal to employ someone without a certain degree?
Next one comes in again from Spyro, who says, I'm not some super awesome Elon Musk level dude, but I've endured through more and worked harder than at least some people I know who had other life advantages. Again, this kind of plays into the point that we're making, which is that, no, I don't think that higher education anymore is an indication of intelligence whatsoever, to be perfectly honest with you. And I haven't thought so for a long time. Testicular Tactics, funny ass name, by the way. Testicular Tactics says people need to quit ragging on Posh all the time. An accent like that is how you get the girlies.
Has he considered the fact that I say things in the accent and not just have the accent? Because they can also hear what I'm saying, and then they go, oh.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Posh, I'm actually all good on the super chats. If you want to wrap the stream up, and we can get out of here for the day.
Okay, so thank you, Andrew, for being here. Georgia, thank you for calling in. Also to Jim Bob and everyone who has participated. Very glad we had this discussion, because I was always wondering if it was more of a socio-political project, because I'm very concerned about those. Whenever someone tries to say, we'll establish a department of X or ministry of Y, I always think, oh God, you're just trying to be apply aesthetics to a failed system. It's just not going to work. We have
trying to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
Exactly, and then press it real hard. But it's sort of like you have conservative parties like here in Serbia who want to establish a ministry of family, and I'm just thinking, why? You're just giving that as red meat, and that is what concerned me. So I'm very glad you err on the side of the socio-cultural aspects of things.
There's really no other path forward, to be honest with you. So
in my opinion,
I'm glad I was able to assuage your fears and make you feel a little bit better about at least the kind of Christian nationalism that I discuss and talk about and that I advocate for. Of course, it's gotten a pretty bad rep in the last few years, and then in some ways that's kind of understandable. But
I bet those glasses make you see better.